Translator, Dark Angel. Editor, Kurishin Wuji carried the orthodox might of one standing at the summit of the ninth layer of the element gathering tier. Within such a realm, yellow-grade high-level martial arts were already the fiercest arts one could grasp. What was more, he had condensed 2 flashes of qi. So, among those of the element gathering tier, he was unmistakably a figure brushing the threshold of a ruler. Yet, unfortunately for him, his opponent was Ling Han. 4 flashes of sword qi. This was the bearing of a ruler within the same cultivation level. Jin Wuji felt as though he had once again met Qi Yongye head-on. The only distinction lay in brute force. Qi Yongye's power was the stronger. In all else, Ling Han yielded not an inch. In truth, whether in reflex or in capability, Ling Han even surpassed Qi Yongye. Was this truly a youth of 17? Talent, indeed, was a thing that could make one's scalp turn cold. Only at this moment did Jin Wuji finally sever every lingering thought of vengeance. He even resolved to visit Ling Han, bringing his younger brother along to offer an apology and to dissolve the ill feelings between them in one stroke, because Ling Han's future attainments would assuredly be terrifyingly high. It was practically guaranteed that he would become someone who far exceeded Jin Wuji. Since there was no way to erase such a rival, the best course was to befriend him warmly instead. He absolutely could not afford to make an enemy of a man of this caliber. The duel rolled onward without end. This time, aside from Lone Wolf's blood and the indestructible Heaven Scroll, Ling Han had unleashed every skill he had at hand, letting himself savor the fight to the fullest. Yet the 5 elements origin nuclei devoured origin power at a frightening pace, and he could not endure for long. If only he could obtain Dark Moon Grass, it would expand the space within his dantian by many times over. After more than 100 exchanges, the two still held an even, perfectly matched equilibrium. Jin Wuji could not help thinking, there are 3 black great alchemists behind this guy, and anyways, I won't be. Like those before him, he chose to deliberately yield, granting Ling Han a favor. That way, when he later brought his brother to pay Ling Han a visit and apologize, it would likely be easier to erase the remaining ill feelings between them. Brother Ling is indeed brilliant in martial arts. I forfeit. With a swift retreat, he clasped his hands and declared his surrender. Ling Han's later momentum had already begun to wane, and he was just about to circulate Lone Wolf's blood to end it in an instant. He had never imagined Jin Wuji would concede of his own volition. Seeing the friendly gesture from his opponent, he nodded in return and said, "Thank you for the match." Any man can err. If forgiveness is possible, then it is wise to grant it. Besides, the conflict between him and Jin Wuji had never been some blood feud that could not be resolved. Sure enough, another forfeit. Could it be that among the martial arts techniques Ling Han has learned, there's one specially meant to make the opponent forfeit? Ha ha ha, if you were as talented as Ling Han and have also formed 4 flashes of sword qi, I could also declare forfeit in front of you. Pei, how could 4 flashes of sword qi be so easily formed? The spectators were both stunned, because Ling Han had taken yet another step forward, and yet strangely numbed, as though this were merely the natural flow of things. After all, the same scene had already played out many times. Fortunately, Ling Han had only one last opponent remaining. Even if Qi Yongye also forfeited, they would only need to be shocked one final time. Good. Ling Dongxing clenched his fists tight, his excitement so intense it left his hands slightly numb. His son had achieved such a feat. What more could he ask for? He recalled how 2 months ago, when his son declared he would take first place in the tournament, he had been utterly incredulous. But now, first place was already within arm's reach. Even though he knew Qi Yongye was formidable, that the Son of Heaven fist technique matched 4 flashes of sword qi, and that the fourth prince's cultivation was far above Ling Han's, he still could not stop that wild hope from surging to life. What if his son truly accomplished the impossible? First place. Since he had already come this far, then he must surely aim for first place. If he did not even challenge, he would regret it for the rest of his life. The other stage masters were all still locked in battle, yet few spectators watched them anymore. Everyone waited with bated breath for Ling Han to recover and for the final bout to begin. Would Ling Han forge yet another miracle, becoming the greatest dark horse of this Dayuan tournament? Or would the fourth prince have the last laugh? sweeping away the stigma of second place entirely. Ling Han had more than enough time to rest and recover, for there was no rule that demanded he issue a challenge after only half an hour's rest. Naturally, he would restore himself to peak condition before stepping forth to challenge Qi Yong Ye. Though even after a long time, Ling Han did not move to issue the challenge, none of the spectators urged him, for they understood well. Only if Ling Han recovered to his best could he and the fourth prince offer the most wondrous, most brilliant battle. After another hour passed, Ling Han finally rose. Here it comes, here it comes. All the spectators thought so at once, their excitement flaring instantly. Fourth prince, let us battle. Ling Han sprang onto the first tournament stage and issued his challenge to Qi Yongye. Brother Ling, please. Qi Yongye smiled, though inside he had the urge to start cursing. After all, those before him had all thrown their matches because 3 black-grade alchemists stood behind Ling Han. Should he throw his match as well, or not? If he yielded, then what? First place in this Dayuan tournament was something he had coveted for 3 years, and Dark Moon Grass could let him step straight into Gushing Spring Tier, saving at least 2 or 3 years of cultivation. But if he did not yield, then what? The others had all thrown their matches, and would that not be refusing to give Ling Han face? It would be fine if it were anyone else, but Qi Yongye possessed grand ambition. He was someone who would become a famous lord, and a famous lord should respect the wise and recruit talent from everywhere, anywhere. Especially for a genius like Ling Han, entering into conflict with him was naturally a very bad thing. So how could Qi Yongye not be trapped in a dilemma? In the end, Qi Yongye still decided to go all out. At worst, after he commissioned the refining of alchemical pills from the Dark Moon Grass, he would give one to Ling Han. Please. Ling Han raised his sword, and 4 flashes of sword chi burst forth. Qi Yongye let out a thunderous shout, and immediately unleashed the Son of Heaven fist technique. His movements were broad and domineering, as if a single punch could shatter all things, even a mountain that stood in his path. Even more terrifying was that 3 layers of qi actually coiled around his fists. Though the power of the nation could not simply be tallied as a clean sum, no matter how it was measured, its strength still equaled 4 flashes of sword qi. All the spectators sucked in sharp breaths. So Qi Yongye had not shown his full ability earlier. This was the true extent of the fourth prince's power. So strong, how could Ling Han possibly win against this? Even if his opponent were someone approaching Gushing Spring Tier who had not yet formed qi, he still would not be able to match Qi Yongye. Peng, peng, peng. Under the relentless weight of heavy fists, Ling Han was forced into continuous retreat. Yet even as he endured such bombardment, there was not the slightest harm upon his body. Body of dead tree. Ling Han was momentarily dazed. If he did not bleed, then how was he supposed to circulate Lone Wolf's blood? He was on the verge of fainting. So it turned out that defenses that were too strong might not be a blessing at all. They directly conflicted with his use of Lone Wolf's blood. He roared, then bit down viciously on his tongue. At once, a bitter taste flooded his mouth. He had finally begun to bleed. Hong. The 4-5 element's origin nuclei within his body immediately spun even faster, abruptly raising his power to a brand new level. 9th layer of element gathering tier. The higher the cultivation, the smaller the power uplift from Lone Wolf's blood. However, this was already enough. Ling Han swung his iron sword, driving the shocking electricity sword arts to their utmost. Ding, 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 peng, 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 peng. The 2 fighters collided in a savage exchange, each displaying their prowess as freely as they pleased. Gods, so element gathering tier can actually be this powerful. I'm also at the 9th layer of element gathering tier, but if I were the one fighting, I'd probably be defeated within 3 moves. If you constantly compare yourself to others, you will only make yourself angry. A new generation will soon replace the old generation. We're all old already. This era belongs to the young generation. Quite a number of clan heads from Grey Cloud Town sighed warily. Some were 30, some 40, some even 50, and all were trapped at the 9th layer of the element gathering tier. Because they could not break through even after a long time, they had tempered their origin power to the limits through constant practice. Yet, when facing these 2 youthful talents, they could only sigh at their own inferiority. Translator. Editor. Kurisu Chiyongye's heart was struck dumb with astonishment. At the start, he had believed he could look down upon every so-called genius in this Daiyuan tournament. Even if he held back, he would still seize first place with effortless ease. Everything had indeed unfolded as he intended, at least it had, until he met that dark horse named Ling Han. Too strong. This time he had truly driven himself to the limit, yet he still could not find the slightest sign of having gained the upper hand. How could he possibly not be shaken to the core by this? Ling Han was only at the 4th layer of element gathering tier, yet he already possessed such might. Then, once he reached the 7th layer and formally stepped into the late stage of element gathering tier, just how terrifying would his strength become? He could no longer be called a genius. He was a monster. Even Feng Yan wasn't this formidable 3 years ago, right? Qi Yongye could not help but think, within the younger generation of Daiyuan City, Qi Yongye had never been the most gifted. That title belonged to Feng Yan. 3 years ago, Feng Yan, standing at the 9th layer of element gathering tier, had ascended to first place with absolute dominance, crushing Qi Yongye beneath him. And in the tournament before that, Feng Yan, at merely the 4th layer of element gathering tier, had still managed to defeat many opponents at the 9th layer of element gathering tier and seize first place. Even after entering Huyang Academy, where geniuses of every sort gathered like clouds, Feng Yan's radiance did not dim in the slightest. Last year, he had already broken through to gushing spring tier and earned a place among the Academy's top 10 strongest elites. Qi Yongye could only admire such heights from below. Now, Qi Yongye had finally beheld another monster who could rival Feng Yan, perhaps even one more talented than Feng Yan had been. Because when Feng Yan had been at the 4th layer of element gathering tier, those opponents at the 9th layer were nowhere near as strong as Qi Yongye was now. As blades and fists met in fierce contest, Qi Yongye thought, since Ling Han was so monstrously gifted, he might as well lend a hand, help the other establish a grand reputation, and let him enter Huyang Academy in glory that did not pale beside Feng Yan's. And by then, Feng Yan would surely feel pressure, wouldn't he? Fine. Then he would give Ling Han face and do him a favor. Of course, if Ling Han had not been powerful enough, Qi Yongye would never deign to grant him such a favor. But since Ling Han had now displayed strength sufficient to match his own, Qi Yongye was more than willing to do him this favor at so small a cost. After all, who knew what heights this monster would reach in the future? He also had 3 black-grade alchemists backing him, so surpassing Feng Yan in power was no distant dream. Such a figure was worthy of his investment. This kind of stake, he was willing to gamble on it. Ha ha, Brother Ling truly is extraordinary. I forfeit this battle. Qi Yongye conceded of his own accord. Ling Han let out a short laugh and said, this battle can only be considered a draw. His strengths lay in the body of dead tree ability, in defenses, and in a terrifyingly swift recovery speed. Yet his weakness was that the 5-element origin nuclei drained his origin power reserves far too quickly. Thus, he truly could not say with certainty that he would defeat Qi Yongye. Therefore, a draw was the fairest judgment. Qi Yongye shook his head and said, you're only at the 4th layer of element gathering tier, and you can already match me. If I still insist this was a draw, then my skin would truly be too thick. After speaking, he leaped of his own will onto the 2nd tournament stage. Ling Han had reached the top. Hua! Below the stage, a clamor of shocked gasps and exclamations erupted. Although such an outcome was not truly beyond expectation, when they heard the 4th prince declare his own forfeit with his own mouth, there were still many spectators who felt as if it were unreal. 6 years ago, the most talented genius of Daiyuan City at the time had braved every hardship and, with only the 4th layer of element gathering tier, courageously seized first place in the tournament, and now, 6 years later, a similar towering dark horse had appeared once more. Was the martial path of Daiyuan City beginning to flourish? Ling Han made no pretense of modesty, because he truly needed the prize awarded to the first place winner of this tournament. Thus, he only raised his clasped hands toward Qi Yongye, indicating that he would remember this favor and repay it tenfold in the future. At this moment, there was only about half an hour left before sunset, and only one tournament stage remained in battle. If the stage master won, then the heavy curtain would finally fall upon this Dayuan tournament. If he did not, then there would still be a bit more waiting before it ended. However, there were no further surprises. Half an hour later, the rankings of the top 10 strongest were finally confirmed. First place, Ling Han. He really got first place. He really got first place. Ling Dongxing kept muttering. Excitement and disbelief covered his face. His son, once publicly acknowledged as trash, had actually lived to see the day he became the first place winner of the Dayuan tournament. At last, he burst into uncontrollable laughter. Overwhelmed with joy, the top 10 martial artists all descended from their respective tournament stages. After this, a banquet would be held at the royal house of the Dayuan king to celebrate the success of the top 50 participants. Congratulations, Brother Ling! Congratulations! Qi Yongye and the others all gathered around Ling Han to offer their congratulations. Thank you, thank you. Ling Han clasped his hands politely in reply. Haha, later we absolutely must drink ourselves thoroughly drunk. But of course. Let's go, let's go. Only the top 50 participants could attend the banquet. Their friends and family were not allowed to accompany them, so whether it was Ling Dongxing or Lu Yutong, neither could go with Ling Han. Very soon, Ling Han and the others arrived at the royal house of the Dayuan king. This was a colossal residence, at least 10 times larger than the fourth prince's residence. The embellishments and decorations within were extravagantly luxurious, making quite a few young men from smaller towns stare about with gaping mouths, as if village boys who had wandered into the imperial palace. The host of this banquet was the Dayuan king, and later he would personally present the top 10 with their respective prizes. However, the Dayuan king did not remain for long. He was a powerful warrior of spiritual ocean tier, so he had no need to put on airs at all. He only needed to take a seat, and he would naturally exude a terrifying aura, causing all others to feel a kind of pressure. After he left, the atmosphere finally grew lively. They were all young people, so they quickly found common topics. Soon, all of them would be heading to Huyang Academy, so naturally they wished to make more friends, so they could look after one another once at the academy. However, Ling Han was a bit agitated. He waited impatiently for the presentation of the Dark Moon Grass, a treasure that even powerful warriors of heaven tier would envy. As long as it had not yet entered his pocket, he could not set his mind at ease. Thinking of it, it was actually rather amusing for him to become so impatient with his own temperament. After waiting 2 hours, the banquet finally ended, and the prizes for the top 10 were presented to their winners, each contained in a small box. Ling Han opened his box and looked. Inside lay a herb about a foot long. Each leaf was crescent-shaped, and its color resembled moonlight gone dark. It was indeed the Dark Moon Grass. Ling Han let out a breath of relief. He was just about to take his leave, but Qi Yongye and the others came over to make small talk, so he could not depart yet. It was not until around midnight that the guests finally dispersed, and Ling Han could finally return to Heaven's Medicine Pavilion. The first thing he did was begin preparations to concoct an alchemical pill. Although the spatial pill was something that even powerful warriors of heaven tier would envy, it could still be taken by martial artists of element gathering tier. So strictly speaking, it was only a yellow-grade mid-level alchemical pill. Ling Han, of course, could concoct it. He had long since prepared all the other ingredients required. The only thing missing had been the main ingredient, Dark Moon Grass. Now that everything was ready, he immediately began to refine the pill. Now that he was in element gathering tier, refining a yellow-grade mid-level alchemical pill was naturally as easy as turning over one's palm. After only half an hour, he had successfully refined the spatial pill. Unfortunately, there was only one. Without the slightest hesitation, he swallowed the spatial pill at once. He promptly sat down and waited quietly for its medicinal power to take effect. Hong. Very quickly, a tremendous transformation occurred within his body. It was as if his dantian had become an ocean with raging waves surging. Each time the waves crashed, the space within his dantian expanded by a little bit.